and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show, Ancient Secrets Revealed. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we are coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. And Scotty, you're in New Mexico, huh?
Yeah, I'm here at the balloon fiesta.
You're kind of soft. You're not very loud. I don't know.
I said I'm at the balloon fiesta. It's
I
an
can't hear you.
international balloon fiesta. Can you hear me?
Not. It's just real. It's clear, but it's real faint.
Huh.
You
I'll
at the
turn this.
what?
It's a balloon fiesta. An
Oh,
international.
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
They have
fun. Did you ride up in
six.
a balloon?
There's 600 air balloons getting ready to go up right now.
Are you going to go on one?
No.
Oh, because you're going back to LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, we have just some, it's really cloudy and we got a little bit of rain, even all the way up here in the mountains from the hurricane.
Mm.
At any rate, today is, we're in the midst of the 9 days of Mother Divine. And it's a celebration, that happens every year. And the Vedic celebrations are, they're all based on, mechanics of existence, really. And they're not arbitrary at all. They're all mappings onto the, calendar 365 days. They're mappings based on the inner mechanics of the underlying basis of creation, the unified field, And at any rate, one of the, so there's a ceremony every day, and one of the ceremonies is probably one of my for sure favorite ceremonies of the year. It's a Durga Havan. And the Durga Havan is always really powerful. So we have, a lot of people come every year. And I think there's a lot to be learned about it. Like Durga is a very powerful embodiment of, personified correlate, personified embodiment of a very profound mechanic of creation. And she's understood to be, the combination of Kali, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. Kali is, it's really all this is very beautiful, the mechanics of creation. Kali is the just pure power. And she's also time, ruler of time. And if you think about that, I think it's really beautiful that power, I mean, just think of the power of time. It's formidable, it's ongoing, it's irreversible. And so we have Kali. And then Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess of the value of prosperity, abundance. A lot of times they think it's just financial wealth, but it's wealth in all regards. Lakshmi is related kind of in nature. She would be correlated to just a beautiful summer day, and everything's green and lush and like that. And then Saraswati, the goddess of intellect, wisdom, music, like that. And when you think about it, power, wealth, and intellect. I mean, in a sense, if you have all that working for you, life is good. But there's a really interesting thing that came up during the Havan. We of course do the thing, and then the Havan, and between different stages of the Havan, oftentimes Pandaji will talk, and we talk back and forth. And the idea of Lakshmi and Alakshmi are that idea came up, and see the idea is that the way existence came into being is there's this one value of divinity, and another value that you could say is that which it's called the Ashura value. It's in it, simplistically speaking, and we could say it's like the negative value, the Rakshasa value, but it's even kind of like the idea of that there can be identity with the notion of other when really everything is one. Mm-hmm. And so within the ocean of existence, there's like a tug of war between divinity, the gods, the devas, and the Ashura value. So you got the Ashuras over here, and the divinities over there, the gods are over there, and they're doing a tug of war. And as that happens, then the ocean of the transcendent, the ocean of being, that source of all existence, gets churned up. And out of that churning, of course, comes the nectar of immortality, that ambrosia, the source of life and health and plenty, the Lakshmi value, prosperity, abundance. But see, now it gets interesting because in that churning process, before that Lakshmi value emerges into existence, and I'm talking relative existence here, things purify. There's a purification process to that churning, kind of like in a washing machine, And so what comes out prior to Lakshmi is called Alakshmi. It's it's the opposite value. Sometimes referred to as Jeshta Devi. And so that's the older sister of Lakshmi, because Jeshta Devi, comes out of the process first. She's born first. But Jeshta Devi it's really interesting because it's like the embodiment of the opposite value of prosperity and good. And so, but nevertheless, there's a mapping there. There's a polar opposite value. So Jeshta becomes like the goddess that corresponds to Lakshmi, but for unhealthy actions, unhealthy people, maybe people who make their money through negative means or eat bad food or drink, gamble, I don't know, whatever, all those sort of values. And so you've got Lakshmi, you've got Alakshmi. And then what happens then is, so if a person is living that kind of unhealthy life, that value because everything has a personified correlate. So that value of improper abundance, lack of abundance, abundance with impurity in it, dosha, they call it, in it, it becomes the value that permeates the home of people like that, and it affects their lives in a negative way. Is that making sense, Scotty?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so the idea that, and of course, Lakshmi is beautiful and abundant and all that, but the manifestations, the images, we could say to describe the looks of Jeshta Devi is, she's unattractive, tattered clothes, just, and kind of the whole negative image you might take of that sort of a thing, And so by living our life in accord with nature, in accord with natural law, in accord with the positive values of natural law, then we purify out that influence gesture and start to live a life in abundance and prosperity and, you know, all good things like that. Now, what's, I think, incredibly fascinating is the temples in India. And it's looking like, Scotty, you know, we might be going to India pretty soon, huh? And we'll see, because we're hoping to continue the development of Mount Soma, which is an enlightened city. It's in the cognitions of the rishis, and really our project here at Mount Soma is to build this community that takes on that value of, you know, you could say Lakshmi and all good things, and radiates that into the environment. And so it's really interesting that, and so we're going to India. Hopefully, hopefully we won't have to go. We can do it all by phone. But if not, then we'll go to India and try to get it put together, get things moving forward. But it's interesting that the temples that we would be building and the things we would be building, that's huge. I mean, it's a gigantic project, but are built out of granite. And granite is a very interesting material. It's granite is like 40% or more quartz crystal. And we know that, you know, quartz and crystal is, you know, they're used in cell phones, and even back when radio oscillators, you know, that were all made out of crystal. So crystals, you know, have a lot of capacity. They can even store knowledge. There are people that are experimenting with using crystals to store knowledge of huge libraries all in one teeny tiny little piece of crystal, you know. And so the crystal then in the granite that's in these temples, and it's all designed, it's an art, it's a science, you know. And so it's designed in a way where then the entire structure resonates, and the crystals then, through the chanting and the operation, and even the very structure of the enlightened city is such that it resonates with the inner purity and divinity and health, and it radiates that out to the environment. So the whole thing, the whole structure becomes like this big, huge crystalline castle, you know. And granite is a major medium of that. And you know, there's so much in the world today, you know, the monoliths, and there's some incredible monolithic. Even in England, there's one that goes, I forget, it's something like 300 tons or something, I don't know, but it goes 25 feet in the air, 25 feet in the earth. It's been there for, they don't know how long, thousands of years. And in France, there's all those monoliths all lined up, and they have no idea how they did it. And temples all over the world, and they're all designed to resonate in some way or other with these, you know, cosmic energies is the idea. But I know that the Vedic Architect, Sapati, they're called, who has given us the drawings from the cognitions of the Ancient Rishis, he said there's nothing like this anywhere in the world. And I was like, when he said that, I was kind of taken back, because in India, for example, there are just some incredible temples, you know. And you can feel the Shakti, you can feel the energy from them. And I said, well, what about this? Or what about that? He said, no. I wonder if that temple complex in Thailand, what's it called, Scotty? I forget. You know, now it's all overgrown and everything, but I wonder if there was a time. Angkor Wat, yeah. I wonder if that was at one time an enlightened city. I don't know. But the problem with Angkor Wat, though, is if you look at the history of it, you know, the knowledge got abandoned, because, see, it's one thing to build it. It's quite another to operate it. And it's a huge challenge. Both are a huge challenge. Angkor Wat, it ended up that they started doing different ceremonies other than what the structure was built for. and then it stops resonating. And then there's a thing, it's the heart of the thing. It's called the Brahmastan, the heart of the Purusha value, the heart of the being, if you will, if you want to put it that way. It's located right in the center. It's called the Brahmastan. And one of the kings, when he died, wanted to be buried in the Brahmastan, which is, just like, whoa. So the knowledge easily gets lost. So it's one thing to build it, which is extremely challenging, and it's another thing to maintain it. And the building process meets with tremendous resistance because there's a principle in nature. You can't have a positive end of a magnet without having a negative end. Positive creates negative. And so the challenges are formidable, even with building a Shiva temple. And it's well known in India that, the obstacles to building a Shiva temple are huge. They say great kings with huge armies try to build Shiva temples and fail, And so we're fortunate that, it was definitely, the challenges were unbelievable in building the Shiva temple. And now with the enlightened city, the challenges are, 1,000 times greater. So steady hand on the rudder, just keep plugging away, And these principles of nature, the structure of existence, that self-interacting dynamic of pure isness, pure consciousness, pure oneness. They talk about the Big Bang, and the idea is that the Big Bang has happened at some point in, billions of years ago, and that was the source of the universe. It's interesting because a lot of those formulas for the Big Bang are correct, but they're misunderstood. They're not used properly. And the reality is, according to the ancient rishis and stuff, the Big Bang occurs at every point in creation eternally. In other words, all of this that's like they say, I am that, thou art that. All of this is nothing but that. Every point is that. But it emerges out of of the absolute and goes into the relative, and that force doing that is called prana, breath. So prana exists on different levels. On the surface, it's just our breathing, but on the depth, it's that at every point in creation, it breathes the quality, the value, the shruti value of the absolute. It breathes it out into relativity. And when it does that, you see, there's another component at work. You've got prana, and then you've also got karma. Karma is just the laws of action and relativity. And so at every point in creation, when the Big Bang happens, and the breath of the absolute emerges into relativity, you've got the actions of karma that interact with it. And so the nature of relativity, the nature of this, that's all, mind born, really, you could say, karma and prana makes mind, you see, mind. And based on the nature of the karma at each particular point in creation, that's where we get existence. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Super cool.
I think it's really, really beautiful, the way it all works. And all the different mechanics of creation, including, you see this churning of the ocean, the devas and the Ashastras. That's going on at every point in creation. Everything in the Veda is going on at every point in creation. And so we've got this Lakshmi value and this Alakshmi value. This Alakshmi is Jeshta value, Jeshta Devi. And so the art of life then is the alignment of the Lakshmi value and sort of sidestepping the Jeshta value. Now, they're there. They're both there. They're inherent in existence. And it's like the earth needs two poles to spin around. If you got a positive value, you got a negative value. That's just like in magnets. There's no such thing as a monopole, And but the thing is, we have what's called yugas. We have ages, times, and there are times like Sat Yuga when the world is living the Lakshmi value, and the negative values, the Rakshasa values, however you want to say it, those do exist, but they're just not here. They're off in some other planet or some other, depending on the yuga, they dwell different places. Now in Kali Yuga, where we're at right now, but what we're transitioning out of, that negative value exists in the hearts and minds of the people. And I guess we don't have to look too far to see that, but it becomes funny because it's not really right to say, okay, yeah, it dwells in people, other people. It dwells in all of us. It's the nature of existence at this time. And so how do you purify it out? Because those thoughts, you experience them as your thoughts. Those feelings, you experience them as your feelings. And your thoughts and your feelings are like your truth, and the mind follows the feelings and justifies it. You can justify anything with the intellect, and we do. So it becomes a real challenge when we're angry, when we're negative, when we're feeling this way or judgmental or that way. It's not easy to take a step back and say, oh, wait a minute, that's the Jeshta value, the Jeshta Devi working through me, the Rakshasas working through me, But if we have a value system, we can use that value system. We have an understanding of life. Then we can evaluate, and it's not easy to do. Usually we don't do it. While it's going on, we are overtaken by whatever those thoughts and emotions are. But at some point, when we can come back into balance and we can look back, then the matter of self-honesty comes into play. Were those qualities really the aspects of nature I want to align with? And that even goes to your friends, your associates, the community, the company that you keep. Are they part of the maintenance of a particular negative perspective on things? Or are they helping you, and are you helping them as your community living life in a way that affects the purity? Because collusion, goes a long way. And what's the expression? You are what you eat. You become the company that you keep. And so then there's that whole thing in the Upangas. It's an aspect of the Vedic literature. And in the Upangas, there's things called the Ashastras. The Shastras, they're kind of like signposts or guidelines, or they come. It's kind of like the Upangas are kind of, you could say, it's sort of a instruction book or a description of the course of life and as it evolves from the perspective of wisdom and understanding and insight, the Lakshmi value, the Sarasvati value, like that. And so if we understand those things, and if we can be really honest with ourselves, we can employ those things to and those understandings to help us lean in the direction of the Lakshmi value, which makes our lives better. You see? That all makes sense, huh, Scotty?
For sure.
Yeah. So we do well, I think, to ask ourselves, what mentality is it that we've joined? What is our relationship with life? What is our relationship with other people? What is our relationship even with people that, not only people that are living the Lakshmi value, but also people that are living the Alakshmi value? And how do we hold that in a manner that is constructive for our own evolution, And that's, we can use all the help we can get, And that's why it goes back to building this enlightened city, this structure, which resonates with and radiates out that Lakshmi value. And they say one enlightened city is enough to transform an entire continent, an entire nation. And that comes right from the cognitions of the Veda. And it's really important to understand. Step one, understand what cognitions are. Cognitions are that inner knowledge of the mechanics of creation at the deepest level of creation. And as it wells up through and is cognized, it comes through the physiologies of the purity of the rishis. They're called, it's a rishi value, the polars of right action, the polars of dharma. And it comes out their vocal cords, and that's where we get the Vedic literature. And it's one thing to hear that and say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. But it's another thing when you really get onto it and you start to understand what's really going on, how life really works. The art of life, as I put it in the announcement for this podcast. So these are things to think about and work with. And the more you study it, the more you get onto it, the more exquisite it becomes. And that's one of the real values of, I think for most people, it starts to make more and more sense to the point where the cognitions aren't just a cool concept. It's something profoundly valuable. But you see, the language of the Veda, even, it's not in our language. It's in the language of nature. And it's a very abstract language. So we can't really be too simplistic about interpreting that either. That's a subtle art. And that's why we say humility is the flip side of wisdom. And every concept, every expression, it's like in Vedic literature has deeper and deeper meanings. And like even with this idea about the churning of the ocean, that is one. See, existence is like it's like a mosaic. Sometimes I compare it to a piece of picture jasper. You can even say it's like a apple pie. You take different slices through the apple pie and look at the side, you see real different patterns. And as valid as this whole thing with the churning of the ocean of being between the Devas and the Ashastras is, there are other aspects of Veda that say it in a very different ways. It's a whole different story. And what some people would view as myths. And the problem with the word myth there is that myth implies, I think, for a lot of people that it's false. But if we can use myths with a capital M and they're true, you see, then we start to get onto the multiple dimensional nature of the manifestation of existence and of all existence. And so all these things are just different slices through the pie, the mechanics of the manifestation of existence. You see, but the language of nature, see, it's all personified. Every mechanic in creation has a personified correlate to it. And so when you read Veda literature, it's almost always, or not, it's often, we could say, expressed in terms of stories of the personified correlates to these mechanics. And that's great. But also there's just the pure physics mechanics of the whole thing. And to build an enlightened city, then it's not just about, the personified correlates to it. It's also about the mechanics and the construction of the temples and the whole enlightened city. Granite, quartz, that whole thing. It's all a science, a very sophisticated science that has its flip side, its correlation with the personified aspects, you see? And that's what we're up to. That's what we're doing here. We were really fortunate. I mean, I've been into this, I first started out, I was 21 years old, but I learned about it was about 10 years later that I found out about an enlightened city. But it wasn't until, Scotty, maybe 15 years ago that I actually finally found the person that actually has the cognitions of the rishis that explain in detail how to go about building an enlightened city. And the Stapati, the Vedic architect in South India, that I think we'll go see Scotty when we go to India, if and when we go, his knowledge is deep and it's profound, and so when he designs an enlightened city, he's very meticulous about it. It's far more sophisticated, really, than how to build a cell phone, for example. Why? Because it's a deeper knowledge. And he's the Vedic architect that designed the Shiva temple that we have here. And he's the one we're going to work with, and who's already provided us with the design, but he will oversee the entire construction of the whole process when it happens. And the influence, again, it's supposed to be enough to transform a nation. Think about that, you know? All right, I guess that's it, Scotty, unless you have anything else.
No, that was great.
Okay, good. So, by the way, if you want to make comments, if you go to michaelmamas.net, which is where you see the announcement, right underneath the title, you'll see a little thing there that says comments. And if you click on that, you can make a comment. You can make it anonymous. And for some reason, when we switched for doing just straight blogs to doing podcasts, I think because maybe people listen to the podcast somewhere other than at that blog page, and they don't seem to oftentimes take the step of going back there and making a comment. If you make comments, that it's a lively thing, and I love to read the comments, and I almost always respond, unless it's a comment that doesn't call for a response, you know. And it becomes a very lively sort of interaction. So you're invited to do that with questions, comments, whatever you want. And I guess that's it for this week. And we will talk with you again next week. Thanks so much for listening.